Hello, amazing, wonderful watercolor artists. I'm Lisa Christensen. I teach watercolor to help others feel joy, and I want them to share that joy with others. I know that everyone can learn watercolor, and when that you create art and give art, it's twofold joy. All right, so today we are going to learn how to draw or trace beautiful songbirds using watercolor pencils. And I am using 140-pound watercolor paper, Derwent Watercolor Pencils, a quill brush, and a simple medium round brush. Not a whole lot of materials, and a light box for tracing. I'm sharing with you how to use watercolor pencils using wet into wet techniques, and along with watercolor. Alright, so let's begin. We are going to start with the tracing. So this is a light box that I bought on Amazon. The link is in the description. And I'm just tracing with a 2B pencil that you get from school that you should have in your house, nothing special. The printable that I'm tracing is a printable that I designed for watercolor cards. You can find that on my YouTube link, and it's also going to be in my Ko-fi shop, and it's free for download. Alright, so as I'm tracing, I have the paper, the printable, on the light box, and then I have watercolor paper on top of that paper, and that's where you're seeing that. And the light box is at full light, so I can really see, and I'm just taking my time. I have this sped up 4 times fast, so it looks like I'm going a lot faster than I really am. But I wanted to get the details, and I really wanted to take my time with that. Originally, it took me about 15 minutes probably to trace the 4 birds, and you'll see the end result in just a second. And I will often pick up my papers, see where I need to get my lines, and just keep going. And I actually find this to be very therapeutic and enjoyable, especially for those that maybe don't like to draw, or maybe in my case I'm comfortable drawing it, but this is already done for me, so why not just use it for my art. And so I am, and I enjoy it. All right, so as I'm doing this, I am wanting to use a sharp pointed pencil. I want the sharpest point pencil. So I have my pencil sharpener close by, and I edited out when I sharpened my pencil, but you want a sharp tip to trace. It will make your paintings, the end result, much better. Other tips I have for tracing is take your time, enjoy the process, and anything that you want on your from your tracing paper, like do it when it's taped to your tracing light table, and that will make all the difference in the world. And just enjoy and have fun. Once you feel that you got a good trace from your tracing paper from the light box, I go in and I just kind of look and see what needs to be changed, what did I miss. It's not perfect, but I want the shape to be right. I want all of my lines to be fairly accurate, and then I can go back in and really clean up my lines, clean up the tracing. The tracing is just that, but then if you go in and clean up your lines a bit, and you can really make it kind of your own. So now that they are traced, I'm going to take a kneaded eraser, and I'm just going to kind of lift up the graphite a little bit, because I just need to see an outline. I don't need it to be very dark, right? So I'm just taking a kneaded eraser, and I'm just picking up the loose graphite so it's not in. And then if I need to define a line a little bit more with a very light touch, I will draw that in. And so that's what I'm doing, and that Finch one looks pretty good. I'm just going to clean up some of the graphite that's on the paper, and that's what I'm doing here, and you'll see that. Now I did decide to change where my bird is on that one. I actually retraced it so it was more in the center, and you'll see me doing that right now. I just took another blank piece of watercolor paper cut down to the size that I needed, so an A5, and I decided that, okay, I'm gonna just do that one, and that is where I start with. I'm starting with the titmouse, cute sweet bird that I just love, and I'm using a very light grayish bluish colored pencil, and I have my field guide to birds with me that I bought on Amazon from Iowa. That's where I live, so I wanted to paint some Iowa birds, and I'm just blocking in some color. I am thinking about where the lines are, but I'm blocking in color. I used a light blue, and now I'm using Deft Blue. It's a darker blue. It's kind of indigo, but a bit brighter and vibrant than indigo. Indigo is more muted, and I wanted a brighter blue to showcase the wings and the tail wings. So anyways, I'm just loosely coloring in, almost like I'm coloring in with a colored pencil, but I know that it'll get wet, and so it'll look like a painting when I'm done. But if you think about how you used to maybe paint with like the dotted coloring pages, you know, where you just add water, that's kind of the idea here. I'm just blocking in color and getting some values in, and then I'll go in with a brush and just kind of activate that color with water, and that's when the bird really comes alive. I am getting in some detail. That's just to help me know where I want my darks to be and where I need my darks to be. So when water gets on it, it's gonna do its own thing, but at least I have a guideline. With the leaves, I'm just coloring in the leaves with, again, like an olive green pencil. And again, I like to keep my watercolor pencils to be sharp and ready to. Alright, so now that I colored in my lines, I have a very damp brush. Like, this brush is just damp. There's hardly any water on it, but just enough to kind of smooth out those lines. The brush is damp, not drippy, just damp. And I'm just using my brush to move that pigment around. This is such a beautiful, simple little bird that I didn't want to add too much extras, so I'm just adding in a little bit, and I ended up just going back in with some of that detail and adding that detail back in, and now I'm shading in to give it some depth, to give the tail wing a little bit more form and depth. And my pencil lines help me know where that needs to be. Yeah, and so the paper is a little bit damp because I already used, there's already a little bit of wetness on the paper, and so the colored pencils are going to react with the wet paper and give me a darker mark than what I had before. And so you can use that for your advantage, right? And get some beautiful details in that way. So what I'm doing is I'm just getting pigment from my pencil and I'm adding it to the bird. And the one thing I love about the Derwent pencils is it's like there's a little bit of ink, so it's staining. The pigment stains a little bit, so when it stays on, it stays on. And now I'm just going to go back in with the eye and add some more of that detail in. I want to be kind of very precise and just in and out. I don't need to fuss or mess with it too much. Alright, I'm just going to add that branch to say, hey, he's on a branch. Alright, now for the fun part is I'm going to continue playing with the greens and the leaves and get those all looking more like a tree. Alright, so I would consider that this is like maybe the second level, and I'm just going back in and I'm adding a little bit more depth and a little bit more form. It's a lot of push and pull, but I'm feeling pretty confident that we are about good with this bird. Again, this is a card. If I were to spend a lot of time on illustration, maybe I would take more time and start with the background first, but I'm happy with how this bird is turning out, and I think a family member who loves to bird watch will absolutely love this. So I am becoming very happy with how this bird is turning out. Once I feel pretty confident in the rest of this bird, I'm going to start on my backdrop, and you'll see that in just a second. I'm going to take my paintbrush and brush on some pigment and give it a good splatter. So I take my wet, clean brush, and then I'm just going to splatter all over and just get a really nice little wash with it. And that's really all there is to it. And I do like to use splatter just to get paint on my page and be like, you know what, I'm not going to fuss around it. It is what it is. And now I'm splattering with the colored pencil. So I'm taking the brush and I'm brushing off the pigment onto wet into wet, and then that's what gives me that beautiful speckled marbling look, which I absolutely love. And I'm doing that again here. I think that birds, especially songbirds, work well to be illustrated in the same environment of the color that the bird is. So if the bird is brown, like a sparrow, then you would do a brownish environment. But this is a titmouse, and they are bluish grayish, and so I thought, well, a bluish grayish sky would be perfect for that. So that's why I chose that background. Alright, so while I let that one dry, I'm going to move on to my sparrow. This could have been any real songbird. I could have probably made this like a goldfinch, but I chose to do a sparrow. And I know that sparrows and finches look kind of the same. Their beaks are maybe a little bit different, but realistically, if you're a birder, you would know. Otherwise, it's just fun to see. But I am, again, just blocking in color. So I'm using my colored pencils, and I'm blocking in color. We have a bunch of tree sparrows, which only come in the winter, and then by the springtime, they're gone. So it's really kind of fun to see the winter birds here in Iowa. We also have other house sparrows, and they stay year-round, but I think sparrows are just beautiful, and I love how sweet they are and just how beautiful like their songs are. It's just so fun. So anyways, I'm just kind of blocking in some color. I feel like the tracing really helped, so I didn't have to think about it too much. And then I'm just getting in the eyeball. I'm not coloring it all the way in. I'm just getting the shape of it. And so now I'm wetting my brush. I'm using my quil brush, and I love the quil brushes because they have a nice little end with a nice point. And so I will often go for my quil brushes because they're just so fun to use. Now this one, I am paying attention. I'm just getting kind of the lighter part wet, and then I'll go in with a dark with my brush so I don't get like a muddy mess. And now, because the paint's just a little bit like the water is on the paper, I can kind of color in where I want it to be really dark, and the water will activate it. So it's really kind of fun to use that way. It's almost like using it as like a marker or a crayon, and you get like this really dark dark mark. But anyways, I'm just going in and making it happen with my pencil that I just love to use. Alright, so this particular background is a little bit different. I'm going to color in. I decided that I want the sparrow to be like on the ground and with some like leaves in the background. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just blocking in color. I use green and a blue and a yellow ochre to just get in some of that color. And now I'm blocking in where I want my leaves to be. And that will then help. Again, I'll just use the water to blend it and to get this beautiful looking background. This is like the first step of that. Once I have the color blocked in, I'm going to take again just a damp brush. There's not a lot of water on it, and I'm just going to use that brush to move that watercolor around. It's already on my paper. I just want to try to not have streaks of watercolor pencil lines. And I'm defining a couple more shapes so that I can get a perfect, you know, bird shape that I'm looking for. And then I go back in and get some darker green into my leaves. And I also, you'll see me in just a second, I'm going to add some more leaves because I didn't like having just a little bit of leaves. I wanted more leaves. But I'm just going in, blocking in more color so that when I add the water, it will mix and mingle on the paper and will look more indicative to watercolor. Yep, you'll see, I thought we need some greenery all around. Something that I love about watercolor pencils and just the idea of using watercolor pencils is the background. You have a lot of wonderful options. I always seem to think splatter. When I don't know what to do, I will splatter like everything, and then I'll be like, and then it like jumps into my creativity genius, right? I can say, oh yeah, okay, I know what I'm doing. And so what it is I'm just trying to get a good bit of green all around. I feel like with sparrows, they're surrounded by their background always, and that's kind of endearing to me. And so I wanted the background to be I wanted the background to marry the sparrow. So and I wanted it to be a bit green because I'm thinking about spring. Anyways, the background's always fun, but same thing with this one. As I finish it up, I'm just gonna form up some more of those wings, some more of the tail wings, and I wanted to have the graphite with the pencil to actually show through. So that is what I'm doing here. And I am taking my time. This is sped up about 3 times fast, 2.5 times fast. But I wanted to get that form. And the only way I was going to get that form is if I just use my colored pencils to thicken up and darken up those lines. And now I have that belly that's a little bit rust color. And I wanted to make sure that the bird's feet are looking all right. So it just takes some time, and it's really fun to just play with. I'm calling this about done because I do want some pencil marks. I don't want them to all be just watercolor, and you'll see that in a couple of mine. And then the last songbird one I do actually has more watercolor like elements than with pencils. Alright, so while that was drying, I'm just going to add a little more depth to this bird with the pencil drawings. I just want to get like the form in. I want it to be a little bit more dramatic, and I just want to have fun with it. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm also going to work a lot on the background after I get those little wings. Alright, so what I'm doing here is I'm just free drawing some of those greenery elements. I will use like my watercolor pencil and just add like a little bit of water, and that's what I did. And this is a brown watercolor, so I had some green, but I wanted it to be brown like the dirt on the ground, as if it's in my garden or something. And I thought that was like really charming, so I'm adding more splatter. I'm just letting kind of the watercolor paper to move around the paper. And I'm also thinking about headspace, extra space for like a sentiment that I would want to do or something, and I'm letting that watercolor just kind of move on the paper. I'm also adding a little bit more blue, and I'll be adding some green, and this is wet into wet, so it's not really going to move a whole lot, but it's going to give me that texture that I'm looking for. So then once I kind of like it, I'm just going to like commit to it, right? And that's really fun too. But when you put watercolor on paper, wet paper, it stays, it doesn't move around too much. All right, moving on to the goldfinch. This is actually a purple finch, and I am using geranium, like a scarlet lake, and a light brown and somewhat of a purple. And I have purple finches in my area. They are so beautiful to watch. They're so pretty. They sing beautifully. And what I'm doing is I know I want my lines to be a certain way, so I'm being very particular on how I'm coloring, and then that will then turn into my brush strokes that will go the same way. So if I want the feathers to look like they're on the bird, so that's why I'm going in that direction. I'm also doing the same direction with my watercolor brush, and I am just using a brush that has some water on it, and you'll see that I'm like dabbing off some water. I'm also being very careful not to mix the red in with the orange at this moment. I will change that up, but right now I want the red and the yellow ochre is what I'm using to really stay. And I'm even just wanting to get a good amount of that red. It's called geranium is the color, but you could also use scarlet lake, and then yellow ochre. And I'm just going back in over. Now comes the really fun part. So I have the bird. It's a little bit wet. The bird is a little bit wet, right? I can see that there's just a little bit of water on the paper activating that watercolor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go very lightly with a purple, and I'm just going in wherever I think it needs to have a little bit more form and a little bit more darker value. I'm going to use purple for that, and that will shade the bird a little bit and also add a little bit more value to it. And then you'll see, and I even bring that purpley red color down a little bit into the yellow ochre. And now I'm going to let that dry completely, and I'm going to work on my leaves, and I'm using like a green, like a just a simple green and olive green. When I feel like I am done, I will then go in with my brown on top of the yellow ochre because it's a little bit dry. But first I have to get my details in for my little cute bird feet. Now I can go in with that red again and just kind of control that purple a little bit, give it some more beautiful little feather lines and texture. And what a cute little goldfinch, what a cute little house finch or purple finch this is turning out to be. All right, so now I can get in, the yellow ochre has dried, and now I'm just using like a lighter brown, almost yellow ochre pencil, and it's just gonna kind of integrate in with this red. So you get this little bit of this orange rusty color, but it's so pretty and so fun. And really I just want to have some texture for the feathers, and so that's what I'm doing here. And I'm gonna add some more of that darker color and the red, and I just push and pull between that darker brown and then that lighter red, and that's what it comes to be. And it's so much fun, and I could do this for hours. I think I could paint like 20 of these and still enjoy each process. I just love these little birds. All right, so I just kind of outlined it with the brown, and I left a little bit of white for it. Now you could have just colored the whole thing in and then added a dot of white, but I for some reason like to make my life harder and chose the harder white to leave it alone. I blame that on my watercolor thing that I love. All right, I'm just adding a little bit more detail into the bird. Again, it's a card. If I really wanted to, I could spend hours on this bird, but I really just want to enjoy the process and enjoy giving this away. So, you know, a little goes a long way, the details go a long way, and that's what I'm doing. So for these berries, this is like dioxazine blue, and then I'm adding a little bit of that red that I used on the purple finch, and that's gonna work for the blueberries. So pretty. I love blueberries or raspberries with birds. I have both, or I grow raspberries, and my friend grows blueberries. So I see them often in blueberries and raspberry bushes. And my raspberry bushes, yeah, a lot of birds will eat my raspberries, so I have to pick them pretty fast and regular. Anyways, moving on. I decided that my berries needed to be darker, so I'm adding some more detail, I'm adding more form, and I'm just getting those blueberries darker, and it's working. And again, I love sharing my creativity. This is just a fun practice for me. This practice could also have been perfect for like nature journaling. I could have used this in my nature journaling and just said, I love my goldfinches or my purple finches when they come to visit. They come and visit when the weather is, 50 degrees and sunny. Usually I see them when it's like at least 50 degrees and sunny. So I don't see them a lot in the winter. I don't know if they really go, because when it's 50 degrees in January, I see them, but I won't see them when they're like 20 degrees. So anyways, this very well could have been a nice journal entry piece as well. The background is very simple. I wanted the blueberry bush to kind of be a blueberry bush, and then the background is with that same blueberry color, but I'm just using the sky, and I'm just splattering, and then I'm moving the paint on the paper just to give it a like texture, really. One tip that I have for when you splatter with your wet brush and your pencil is to make sure your pencil is totally dry. So keep it dry, like you want to dry it out before you use it again, because you don't want the lead to get all gummy and yucky, and then you can't sharpen it, and I feel like you kind of ruin a lot of lead that way. So let's go into the bluebird. The bluebird, I'm actually not coloring in. I'm using just pigment, and I love this effect because I can get a beautiful vibrant color. And again, like this could have very well have been like a nature journaling thing. So I love colored pencils because you can take them with you and sketch with them, but you can also paint with them. So I feel like this is like a great tool for artists, because all you need is a brush, a pencil sharpener, and you have drawing tools, and you have a painting tool. So I use these all the time in my art. When it comes to something light like this little bluebird is so stinking cute, and I just wanted a little bit of that yellow to show through. So I'm just adding a little bit of pigment and a little bit of water just so I can make that distinction. And I will go into a little bit more of that red for the red belly, but these bluebirds are so darling. I just cannot get over how cute they are. And so a lot of it is just mixing the pigment with what's already on the paper, and that's why you see me just adding pigment and not a whole lot of lines or sketching. But I wanted to share with you how I like to just literally use colored pencils for painting. And I'll just take the brush and the pigment straight from the pencil and use it on my brush, and I'm just painting as if I was gonna paint it with a cake pan. And again, I'm adding form. I am looking at like a bluebird online that I found. It's from Cornell Labs, so I get like an idea of how the bluebird should look, and I'm just going with it. So really, I'm just adding depth and line and a little bit of texture, you can say. And this is going to be more like a motif than a piece of artwork, just to give you like a sense of, hey, this is watercolored and illustrated in a simple motif like style. Now this one, I am using that blue that's on the bluebird, And that's just like an underpainting sort of thing. And then I'm going to go back in with that green, and that blue is just going to act as like a shadow. You can kind of see how it's doing its thing, and that is really fun. I enjoy doing that. And again, I'm going to keep it fairly simple, but it's so much fun. Once I feel good about it, I'm going to, and the bird is dry, like bone dry, I'm going to go back in and I'm just going to use the brown. I believe this is the same yellow ochre. It might be a light brown, but I'm going to go back in and I'm just going to add some of that detail. And again, the eyes, I just kind of keep it simple. Most people that I send these cards to that I have in mind, they love birds, and they love that they love me, so they know that anything that I paint for them, they're just going to cherish. So I'm just enjoying the process because I know that they will also enjoy the artwork that I'm sending to them. All right, to finish this off, I'm just going to add some more detail wherever those lines were, and I'm just going to like add detail where the red and the blue meet, and I'm just going to like do some feathery type lines, this little flicks, just to give it some texture and make the eyes look pretty good. And as you can see, like there is a lot of texture, but I'm just making it simple. And I think that's an important part of the birds. Birds are pretty simple in general. They can have a lot of fun. So it, and my artistic style is more impressionistic, and I love texture. Okay, so to finish up these, they're all dry. All my card panels are dry, and I found some sentiments that either my friends have given me. There's stamps that either my friends have given me or that I've just picked up along my crafting journey. So I cannot tell you where or who actually made these stamps, or even if they're available. But if you're like me, you probably have stamps, or you can get some. I always like to get like stamps that have like a bunch of different sentiments. And as you can tell, I'm just seeing like shape, size, what do I like? What do I think is going to work? And I thought, oh, happy day, like a birthday card, like a bird saying, oh, happy birthday, it's a happy day, right? Because the sun is shining and I love you. So I thought, well, that will work. And for this one, I wanted something very simple. And I chose You Mean the World to Me because sparrows hold a special place in my heart. They're little, and I love the hymn. The eye is on the sparrow. His eye is on the sparrow, meaning Christ will always remember us. Anyways, and so there we go. I'm just going to start stamping. I use a Misty, and you see that I have my my magnets on the panel. That will help not move your stuff around, your paper around. And sometimes you have to stamp it twice, so that's why I always have it magnet. And you'll see that I really, really don't want it to move, because sometimes the paper will move. I don't want that to happen. And it's also, there's a lot of texture in cold press watercolor, so I want to make sure that my stamp is crisp and clean and clear. And this one is then, I think it's just like hello friend. I wanted it to be just something simple. I think birders like enjoy just the simplicity of seeing the birds. So there you go. And then to finish it up, I am using mounting tape. I don't always use mounting tape, but for these, I thought, I took a lot of time. I want mounting tape on these to really make them look professional and make them look beautiful. And I am hopeful that with this, they will want to see this card for a while. So then I just mount it onto my A2 card base, and I call it good. And I will do that for all 4 of my cards. But you do want to make sure that the ink is dry. So I usually stamp, and then I'll come back like an hour or so, just so I can make sure the ink is totally dry on the paper, so the ink doesn't move. And it's a process. Right? Everything we do is a process, but Anyways, I've had so much fun sharing my tips and techniques. I hope that you download the free printable. It's a PDF or a JPEG, but it'll print just fine in your printer, and to trace it and just enjoy the really the time to paint and give your cards to a friend or a family member. I plan on using these cards for a friend, my grandma's, and maybe even just an encouragement card. So happy creating. I'm so grateful for your love and support, and keep sharing your creativity. Thanks for watching. Bye.